And I'd like to introduce for our first discussion Susan Jewell, who is the founder of Mars Academy USA. And she is an expert in space medicine and astronautics. And today, she's going to talk to all of us about telemedicine and related technologies and protocols in the context of deep space missions like Mars, when you may not have a medical crew, and what all the members of the crew can learn and need to learn to address these issues. Thank you, Susan, for coming today.
Thank you, Owen. Hi, everybody. So I'm going to try to put my mic back on. Just give me a second. And I'm going to start with a video as an intro. Hold on one sec, excuse me. This was a video that was filmed at the Mars Desert Research Station, which I know all of you probably know about, MDRS, by Nat Geo, Science Channel. So I'm just showing you a little excerpt of when they filmed a little bit of the telesurgery that we were conducting there. This was like one of the first studies that we did back in with Crew 134. This is literally about 4 years ago. So hopefully it works. Let's see.
Really feel, live, and act like we are living on Mars, so that we can build this model one day for us to literally live on Mars itself.
No one can leave the hab without wearing a spacesuit.
Okay.
And if someone gets sick or injured on Mars, there's no going home for treatment. Complex medical procedures would have to be guided by specialists on Earth on a 20-minute delay.
The important thing is to make.
So this actually is what
the important direct.
This may all seem like dress up for space enthusiasts, but this simulation has a vital purpose.
So let me now go back to my PowerPoint and we'll give you. So that's an important introduction, because you could see that actually could be a scenario in reality, right? For the very early crews. Hold on one second, I just want to get this right. So my talk is, as Owen introduced me, is about, and that's the key, it's a long title, but basically to summarize, it's if you have a crew that if the doctor is down, or there's no medical assistance, and you just have a crew that's have no or very minimum basic medical knowledge or skills, what are you going to do? Now, when you have humans in the loop, anytime you go out in an extreme environment, it's going to be a high probability that there's going to be some kind of medical emergency or life-threatening situation. So how are these individuals going to manage those situations when they have very little medical assistance, or they have very little medical skills? So this is what we are trying to answer this question. But not only that, we also want to enhance their simulation-based learning and their skill acquisition by using exponential technologies like 3D printing, virtual reality, and augmented reality. So, with that said, we were looking at developing protocols and looking at mitigation countermeasures for using telesurgery and teleanesthesia. Oh, go here. Right, so this is the video. I'm going to show a few minutes of this video to show what we actually did. So instead of me trying to explain, because of time limitation, this video will show you the protocol we designed and what we are enhancing, and we are continuing with this study. This was, at MDRS, which is in Utah Desert. So these are low fidelity simulations for these analog astronaut crews. So later in 2018, we're actually going to go to high fidelity, take this protocol, enhance it with more of the technology that we're currently developing using augmented reality, and also taking it to Kilimanjaro and to Everest. So let's hopefully that this plays. Let me press this. And but you can actually, so because of time factor, this is now start of the protocol itself, how we design it, and what.
Patient has been brought in, the hub has been installed in the surgical table. All the monitoring equipment is in place, and you can see that unfortunately his blood pressure is really low because he lost a lot of blood and he's deconditioned by lower gravity. So Joseph here is just about to start the flow chart. And the first step is to decide which is the best general anesthesia for this scenario. So he knows that the injured part is the abdomen, so he's just clicking on the abdominal region, and then obviously, because here it's a situation of abdominal injury, he is clicking on GA with ETI, which is endotracheal intubation. So now he's going to have to go through all different steps of this general anesthesia protocol, and the first step is to do the checklist. We need to make sure we have all the different equipment here, so oxygen system, suction, operating light, vital signs monitor, and surgical table. Obviously all this is in place. Then we need to make sure all the drugs are ready. So this has been previously prepared, and the drugs are here on the plate, ready to be injected. Then we need to make sure the monitoring and emergency equipment is ready. So this has been done previously, and everything is in place close to the head of the operator. And the medical history form and the patient anesthesia record are also available.
So because of lack of time, I'm going to move forward, and so you can see we use this as we put the protocol into the laptop, so that so Joseph is the crew engineer for this particular crew 133. He has no medical background at all. This is his first introduction to anything that's medically related, and he's literally going to learn. It's going to be his first time to do intubation and to do anesthesia on a high fidelity mannequin. So we also used the software called Muse, where we able to put in all the parameters for vital signs for this, what we call Astroman. We called him Astroman. And if there was, like, for example, if we put in a scenario where there's a hemodynamic instability, it's a lot of hemorrhaging, and so when it goes below a critical level, then it sets off a whole series of alarm, and then the whole place, lights up and lots of noise. So we wanted to add that element of authenticity to the simulation as well. So I wanted to go straight to him doing, now remember, this is the engineer, no medical background, and he's going to do an intubation procedure on this mannequin. We go to it, sorry, let me see, 7:15. So let's start here. Oh, what happened? Sorry. Start there.
Now the patient is anesthetized and needs to be intubated, which is the next step. The next step corresponds to the endotracheal intubation, and to that purpose there's another video in the PowerPoint explaining this procedure is somewhat complex. So the participant is just reviewing the video before attempting the procedure.
So this is his first time after watching that video.
So he's trying after reviewing the video. And it's a difficult procedure really, because the learning curve studies show that you need around 60 procedures to reach a 90% success rate in this procedure. Is it in place?
Yes.
And
Okay,
voila, he did it in first try. This is amazing. Of course, you know, he was an exception to the rule because we obviously done this procedure on many crew members, you know, most of the time they had to take like 6, 7 tries. So he did it first try. But then that shows, you know, yes, you know, somebody who has absolutely no medical knowledge or skill set was able to do an intubation. So now I'm going to move to the next slide. Okay, it's not moving. Why is that? So you have to multitask here, be the audio visual. Can somebody? Why is it not letting me? Okay, I know why. Hold on 1 second. Okay. So, as I said, we have been doing this study, Teleanesthesia, Telesurgery, with several crews, and we've done it up there, MDRS, 4 or 5 crews here, and also last year we worked with NASA High Seas there at the Hawaii simulation there. This is the crew that was in for 1 year. And currently, just recently, we worked with the Poland Moon Mars simulation there in Poland. They just finished, and as I said, we will be doing more high fidelity missions and with Mars Academy. So one of the ideas was like, how can we incorporate exponential technology in an integrated approach to, you know, emergency medicine rescue in an extreme environment here on Earth, as well as, of course, you know, one day on a planetary surface like the moon for the test bedding, and then to Mars. So with the International Space University, I was part of a team of 30 people, 30 students that were looking at this, and we said, okay, you know, this would be an integrated approach for, it doesn't even have to be on Mars, but here on Earth can be applicable, right, when there's a disaster. So like you have the injured astronaut, and you're trying to locate, so maybe you can deploy a dove of nanosatellites, right, from an station in the orbit. And here, of course, we're looking at applied to Earth, would be like the International Space Station. And then now you can even have hyperspectral imaging capabilities, and whether it can be attached also onto the UAV, some aerial, you know, vehicle. Of course, people always say, well, you can't fly drones on Mars, but okay, by that time, when we do get to Mars, maybe we'll have the technology, or we can have some aerial vehicle that will be able to do reconnaissance and also be able to go out before the search and rescue team to be able to locate the injury site and then be able to evacuate the injured astronaut and bring them back, evacuate back to the hab. So we call this MEVR, medical EVAs, and if those of you don't know EVAs, it's literally like, okay, if you have to come out of a pressurized area, of course, you know, on Mars, you're going to be living in a base camp, it's pressurized. If you come, you're going to have to don or wear a spacesuit, and so we call it extravehicular activities, and of course, this is medical, so we call medical MEVR. So our objective here was to look at the different components of developing the protocols and SOPs, standard operation procedures, for MEVR, and split it into 3 components: search and rescue, or SAR, and then triaging basically is, you know, you're going to do the assessment and evaluation of the injured crew members or crew individual, and then evacuation. What do you do? How do you develop those procedures and make them SOPs? So we did several ways, and we looked, you know, here you could see we, you know, simulated a scenario or several scenarios. You know, here you could see we use UAV drones to actually go out before the SAR team to go and locate the injured, to find the injury site and the injured astronaut, which is, by the way, a dummy because of ethical issues. We couldn't use humans in our studies. And then also, you know, looking at how do we incorporate technology for being able to monitor the vitals of the injured astronauts. So we also looked at ways to evacuate. So you can see here we did many ways of evacuation. If it was close to the hab, we did a manual crossover evacuation to the hab. Of course, you can't do that if you're miles away. So then we, you know, the crews use, you know, portable backboard, and then here, okay. So one of the things is, you know, it's so true. If you're going to like be living on Mars or some kind of extreme environment, you're going to have somebody who's a you know, an engineer or you know, a MacGyver. So, so it's so important to have somebody or a team at least to have multidisciplinary skills, practical skills as well, to be able to come up with ideas, you know, with what you have, the resource you have. So we actually, you know, jerry rigged some kind of wheelbarrow was there, and so we used that as a way to evacuate back to the hab. And another way was from Robots Everywhere, Mattel up here. He had built a rover that can actually hold up to 300 pounds. You know, so then we say, okay, what do we have in the hab? And we found 2 plastic lids, and you know, I'm just saying this is an idea of being creative, being innovative, right? And so we literally built a autonomous backboard rover that we tested out to do the evacuation. And here, you know, we also have to look at, you know, how difficult is it to actually do these, wearing the spacesuit, wearing all this equipment. So, and then we incorporate a lot of the technologies. With, you know, first, you know, what medical kit do you want to take with you during the search and rescue? You know, we had this solar-powered GPS, we had the portable ultrasound, you know, and then of course, you know, we didn't have this. We would like to do it when we go up to the high fidelity missions, actually bring a portable telemedicine kit with us. So, okay, now you bring the injured astronaut back into the hab. And so what's the next step? And so this, you know, so there was step by step. It's a full scenario, you know, that we were getting the crews to go through. So they're back in the hab, and then what's the next step? Well, of course, you know, we just showed you what we were doing. We're getting them to train, you know, with teleanesthesia, do the whole setup. And up there is actually the lab, the science section of the MDRS. Hab, which is the downstairs, and then we set up something very quickly there, and then you saw from the video, you know, how the teleanesthesia was conducted. But what was interesting was that we actually collaborated with several medical institutes around the world, and in one case we did a scenario of a Mars-to-Mars base camp with Concordia Station in Antarctica. So if you could see here, let me see if there's the next slide. So here you could see that over there is the Concordia Station. So Concordia Station is like the equivalent of, you know, that's the ESA, the European, Italian, French, there in Antarctica. So we have the US, which is the McMurdo Station in Antarctica. And so their medical crew, they were there for a year. So they actually, because this was a Mars-to-Mars simulation, so there was no time delay. That was the way for us to at least not address the time delay at this point in time. You know, so their medical crew actually trained. They went through, and you can see here, this slide here. This is somebody from ESA, from Europe, coming in at the same time. And down here is actually the medical crew in Concordia Station, watching us and guiding the crew, the analog astronaut crew, to go through the procedures, the anesthesia and the telesurgery. So that was a really interesting exercise as well, to say, okay, you know, literally they watched and they guided, and it was successful, and we did it several times, not just with Concordia, but with medical institutes in Europe, as well as here, of course, in California, in San Francisco. So let me just carry on, because I think that's because of lack of time. So then we said, okay, telesurgery. So what we did with telesurgery was, like, we did, you know, simple, remember, these are non-medical individuals, no knowledge of any kind of, you know, medical procedures or skills. So we said, okay, let's just see, can we train them to get some sort of, like, you know, suturing skills, you know? And so this is the setup here. They had the typical, you know, 2D video. They could watch that. We filmed them, and then we waited a time, because these missions are like 2 weeks or 4 weeks. So we could say how much, once they go through the protocol and they've done it once or twice, then there's a delay in time, and how much skill do they actually retain? What's this, you know, acquisition of skill sets that memory that they retain? So we'll do it again, and then we'll film them, and then we will serve them. But at the same time, we were looking at behavior, you know, because we're trying to make it as fully immersive and as authentic an experience. So we also had the technology. You could see here, this crew member is wearing the neuroelectric cap, And then also this was like that time, instead of using Google Glass, we used another competitive company where they could see the video in one of the lenses there. They can actually watch the video and they can conduct the suturing at the same time simultaneously. And then we were recording, collecting all this data, seeing their behavior, how they reacted, what were their anxiety levels, their stress level, and then we would do it again, and then we'll compare the data and see, do they improve? Is there less stress when they're forced, when they conduct the protocols again? So we're still continuing. we are collecting the data, and we will be publishing the data very soon. We want to be able to also do the high fidelity, make the comparison. So what we did was, we was interested 3D printing. 3D printing is going to open the portal for us to literally go into space, right? Because 3D printing allows us to, take the print only when we want, so therefore you don't need to take that payload up to space with you, and that's a huge challenge, right? To overcome the Earth gravity well, and expensive. So also, what print when you need it, right? So when it comes to medical equipment, right, there's a shelf life, and once you use it, you can't use it again because sanitary issues. So 3D print when you want to, and so we use that. So here. Okay, so in our first few crews, we used a commercial 3D printer, right, off the shelf, and it was fine. But then we said, okay, because we're that type, we're very innovative, and say, okay, what if we're out in the desert or some extreme environment and there's no electricity or there's no energy? We can't use it anymore. So we developed, and up here is actually this is very early prototype. We're now in prototype Mark 4, and this is a portable, solar-powered 3D printer, and here is an integrated extruder head that actually also has a laser cutter. So you can press the switch, and it's still dual function, can be a laser cutter as well as the 3D printer. And so we then said, and that's kind of like the design of it, but we've of course enhanced it more. So we said, okay, so we did a CAD drawing here. That's where, it's a whole integrated system. So we made some CAD drawings of some, basic surgical tools, and you could see here, we printed something up, and we literally used it in the surgical procedure, and it worked really well. And we were able to also print out using mixed material, using carbon with the plastic too. So that was really interesting. That not only can you print when you want, you're able to also print instruments that are very strong and so at the same time we said, okay, with this onboarding of virtual reality and augmented reality, this is kind of like the idea of science fiction converging now with reality or science, and the idea of the Star Trek, right? Star Trek Next Generation, the holodeck. So we want to develop the digital astronauts, but not only doing other things like Green Hab Officer, this. We also want to develop the VR, AR space doctor or space physicians, because one day, just like Darwin Newman said this morning, that when we are going to go into deep space missions, or we're going to eventually live permanently on an off-world planet like Mars and beyond, we really have to be autonomous. So if there is no medical, doctor available, if that person is down, there's no medic. So what do you do? So really, you should be able to have, that system on board, whether in your spaceship or in your, settlement. So this is what we're doing. It's very interesting. Very, very early days. This is about 3 years ago. We just, used the cardboard, right? Google Cardboard, and we were able to actually train people using that VR. And so now what we're doing with Mars Academy VR is that we're developing the digital astronaut, experts. And here we're using augmented reality. And what's interesting is we're putting another extra layer where it's fully immersive. So here you could see we're working with Onflux. This Onflux mocap is the motion capture bodysuit. So you wear it, and it has all the sensors around, key points in your body. So when you move, the avatar actually moves with you too. But you're also able to now manipulate objects in the virtual world. So this is kind of what we're trying to do as well, to put this extra layer of immersion and learning into the space position. So, and I'm nearly done. And so, and we're very open to speaking to anyone who wants to collaborate with us as well, is that we are planning the mission to high fidelity simulations, and then here is our NIME project, and we're going to Africa first, and then we're going to go to Everest later, 2018, and then maybe Antarctica early 2019. But we want to continue with the study, continue with the development of the technologies. So that's it. Thank you.
Should we take a question even though we're out of time?
One question. Yes.
Are you interested in recruiting radiologists?
Oh, yes, of course. Yes, anybody because we would like to digitize you, right? Digital radiologists, digital, so, that's something we would love to have, because really, at the end of the day, it's about being multidisciplinary, right? Everybody is working together in a collaborative team, and with all the skill sets. So, of course, in these crews and in reality, because this is simulation, the reason why we do the simulation is to be able to do these precursor testing, designing ideas, looking at the challenges, finding some solutions, right? But when we literally have our first crew go to deep space and to Mars and beyond, hopefully within the next 30, 40 years, everybody has to have multiple skills. And everybody has to continue learning and acquiring skill sets. So this is where this technology allows us to do this. So thank you so much, everybody.